రిట్గర్స్ యూనివర్సిటీ మరియు ఇండియన్ కౌన్సిల్ ఆఫ్ కల్చరల్ రిలేషన్స్ వారు సంయుక్తంగా డెలివరింగ్ డెమోక్రసీ ద ఇండియన్ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ అనే అంశంపై సెమినార్ నిర్వహించారు. న్యూయార్క్లోని భారత కౌన్సిల్ జనరల్ సందీప్ చక్రవర్తి ఐసీసీఆర్ తరపున ఒప్పందం కుదుర్చుకున్నాడు. రిట్గర్స్ సీనియర్ వైస్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ ఫర్ అకాడమిక్ అఫైర్స్ బార్బారా ఎలీ రిట్గర్స్ యూనివర్సిటీ తరపున ఎంఓయూపై సంతకం చేశారు. ఈ సందర్భంగా సందీప్ చక్రవర్తి మాట్లాడుతూ భారతీయ అధ్యయనాలపై రిట్గర్స్ ఎక్కువ దృష్టి పెట్టడం ఆనందంగా ఉందన్నారు.
It is in fact the first ever Iccr-Rutgers India conference and we are really pleased to kick off our partnership with this event. On behalf of Rutgers Global, I'd like to extend our deepest thanks to Sandeep Chakravarti, Consul General of India, and Shatrugna Sinha, Deputy Consul General of India, for their invaluable guidance in planning and co-sponsoring this event. Therefore, being part of today's discussions about Indian democracy at an institution of higher learning that supports a diverse international environment and draws on our global experiences, having started my journey here as an international student many years ago, today I see myself as the product of a great India-US partnership in education. The timing of this conference is key, undoubtedly, as India prepares for the largest democratic exercise in human history, where more than 800 million people will vote in the general elections this year. My own experience of Indian democracy has been an integral part of my formative years. From open dinner table and classroom conversations to standing in line to vote at the age of 18. And that voting line, with all classes, regional backgrounds, religions and ages coming together, was a great leveler and representative of the aspirations of Indian democracy. An eminent poet and writer from India, one that I greatly admire, Javed Akhtar, has rightly remarked that because of its pluralist traditions, democracy has found a natural home in India. He makes an interesting observation that I'd like to share with you, that if you draw an arc from India westward towards the Middle East, you will not find that sustained democratic tradition until you reach the Mediterranean coast. For this reason and more, Indian democracy is special and is currently brimming with possibilities. And yet, it is important to note that democratic governance is a subject that finds little mention in the global discourse about India. This may be the result of misperceptions or certain gaps in understanding, and one of the motivations for today's conference is to fill those gaps and showcase the rich legacy and future possibilities of Indian democracy. Today, we are really honored to have such an impressive roster of scholars, diplomats, business leaders gathered here today, who will discuss in depth India's democratic, economic, and social achievements, and will also analyze the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for the world's largest functioning democracy. But before we dive into today's agenda, I would like to share with you a little bit about Rutgers Global and the highlights of the university's engagements with India. A little bit about Rutgers Global. Created in 2011 to provide a central and strategic direction for the internationalization efforts of the university, Rutgers Global is the institution's hub for global engagement. Under the leadership of Dr. Rick Garfunkel, Rutgers Global is comprised of units responsible for facilitating study abroad programs, providing legal advising and processing services, as well as transition support for international students and scholars, providing academic support for international students, building partnerships across campus and around the world, coordinating globally themed programs and events, and offering a wide array of innovative academic and professional training programs. Our organization seeks to stimulate conversations such as this on critical global issues and to integrate internationalization into the mission and functions of the university. We see this conference as a positive step in that direction. As the leading public research university in the state, Rutgers is uniquely positioned to respond to the opportunities provided by the development of connections and relationships with India, and through these foster a deeper understanding of Indian culture, language, and people. We know that right here in Middlesex County, we have one of the densest populations of Indian Americans in the United States, And the university itself is home to more than 650 students from India, as well as more than 75 faculty of Indian origin, making up a significant, vibrant and active community on as well as off campus. Our students can earn a minor in South Asian Studies, drawing from the hundreds of South Asia-related courses taught at Rutgers. We take great pride in our various collaborations with India. Earlier this year, some of our colleagues from the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences visited Amrita University to explore the feasibility of their experiential field-based learning program called Live-in Labs as a potential study abroad option for students. Next month, a group from Rutgers will visit 4 cities in India on a graduate student recruitment trip. Representatives from several academic schools and Rutgers Global will participate in this initiative, and in each city, we will host student engagement sessions as well as networking events with key stakeholders. In 2011, Rutgers was invited to join the Institute for International Education's International Academic Partnership Program for India to help universities in the US form partnerships with universities overseas. Rutgers was one of 11 institutions that participated in the 2012 study tour, visiting more than 20 educational institutions and other organizations in Mumbai, Hyderabad, and New Delhi. In 2013, Rutgers New Brunswick Chancellor, Dr. Richard Edwards, signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Indian Council for Cultural Relations and the Consulate General of India in New York City to create an Iccr Chair of Contemporary Indian Studies. And in 2017, we hosted our first Iccr Chair, Professor Binod Khadria, from the School of Social Sciences at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi and the School of Management and Labor Relations here at Rutgers. The most recent, in fact, a 5-year agreement between Rutgers and the Iccr for a short-term faculty exchange program was signed just yesterday, with the Consul General present and with Dr. Christopher Malloy, our Chancellor, and our Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Barbara Lee. It was a momentous occasion, and we look forward to many such opportunities in the future. We have several active agreements with many institutions of higher education in India, including, but not limited, to the Amity University, Gurgaon, and ERA University with Rutgers Biomedical Sciences, Assam Agricultural University with the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, King George's Medical University with the Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, and Sibir University of Dental Sciences with the Rutgers School of Dental Medicine. There have been some great collaborations with the Indian Institutes of Technology, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and many more. I must also mention, while talking about our collaborations with India, that the Rutgers South Asian Studies Program, or the SASP, an interdisciplinary center dedicated to promoting the study of South Asia and its diasporic communities through public talks, cultural events, hosting scholarly visitors, and offering small grants for research, is also an extremely active center here on campus. We have several other programs and initiatives like the Bengali Language and Culture Initiative, or the multifaceted South Asia Total Health Initiative, and other Indian culture and language focused groups and student organizations. As you can see, I could go on, but Rutgers' ties with India run deep, and we look forward to opportunities to develop them further in the years to come. We are honored again to be hosting today's conference and are certain that the day will be rich with varied perspectives, healthy debate, and thought-provoking discussions. I'd like to once again take the opportunity to thank Sandeep Chakravarti, Consul General of India, and Shatrughan Sinha, the Deputy Consul General, as well as the Indian Council for Cultural Relations and Rutgers Global for putting together this conference. We are confident that this is the first of more such wonderful opportunities. Thank you to our speakers and to you, our wonderful audience, for being here and engaging in this important conversation. I hope it's a productive day for everyone. And without further ado, let me invite Shatrughan Sinha, the Deputy Consul General, who will guide us to the rest of the morning's program.
Mohini already introduced the conference, but I would still like to dwell upon why are we discussing democracy today. As you would have seen, the title of the conference is Delivering Democracy. Why democracy in India and why now? Well, democracy is an inseparable part of Indian culture. Strong public institutions, freedom to express wide-ranging political views, and the vibrant economy and society are all underpinned on the strong democratic roots which we have. Democracy is now being used as a tool for public service delivery, especially to the last mile. India is attempting the world's largest exercise in inclusiveness, whether financial, digital, or social rights. India's democracy in a multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic society is an achievement which we all celebrate, and celebrate we must. However, democratic governance and development governance in India find almost no mention in the discourse about India, probably for reasons which are unknown, but some people feel that it is because of the belief that researchers have regarding democracy in India. They have some reservations regarding the quality of democracy in India. This is an attempt to remove those misconceptions. Hopefully through this conference we'll be able to improve the understanding of democracy and how it has delivered, how it has developed states for everyone within India. This is an attempt to fill that gap, the inadequate level of global discourse about democratic governance and various aspects of India's hard-earned success on this front. We have some eminent speakers from India and the US for today's discussions. I would not like to stand between you and the great panelists which we have. We would start with the first panel. The first panel is that will discuss democracy and the economy. I must introduce the panelists. The first, we have a very eminent person from India, Syed Zafar Islam. He is the national spokesperson for BJP for both political and economic affairs. He was given this responsibility in 2015. He took an early retirement from a very lucrative job. He was managing director, country head of Deutsche Bank in India. But his passion for politics and to serve his motherland, to serve his people, took over, and he joined politics. He's a renowned international investment banker, but right now he's full time with the party, the ruling party in India. He also interacts with the global investors on behalf of his party. He's on the board of directors for Air India. He's the government nominee on board of directors for Air India. He has done his masters from AMU, and he later specialized in higher management courses in IIM Ahmedabad. If you are not able to find him, please watch Indian television channels from 4 to 11 every evening. You can find him on one of those channels. We also have Harshvardhan Singh. Harshvardhan is a local boy. If you know Bollywood, he's the gully boy. They call him the gully boy. He comes from Atlantic City here in New Jersey. He is also a senior director, technical operations and business development of high-tech systems and engineering consultancy firm. But public service and politics, that bug has bitten him hard, and it's very difficult to get away from that. He was in 2018. He stood second in a group of 8 for the US House of Representatives, New Jersey District 2 Republican primary. In 2017, he stood third in a group of 5 in the New Jersey gubernatorial Republican primary. I'm sure we will see him rising further in politics and holding very high offices. Today he will give us the American perspective of democracy and its delivery. We also have Mr. Ashwini Tiwari. He is the country head US operations of State Bank of India, New York. State Bank of India, US, I must say. He is based in New York. He holds a bachelor's degree in engineering, electrical engineering, just like me, but I'm sure you have forgotten all your network theories and electrical machines by now and concentrate more on cash reserves ratio and LIBOR rates, I don't know. He's a career banker with 25 years experience with State Bank of India in India and outside. Having joined as a directly recruited officer in 1991, Mr. Tiwari has handled assignments in diverse areas of credit, international banking and retail banking. Prior to his current assignment, he was regional head and general manager, East Asia of State Bank of India, Hong Kong, and oversaw the business development and control of State Bank of India in Hong Kong, China, Japan, Korea, and the neighboring region. That was huge responsibility, I'm sure. His previous roles also include Deputy General Manager, Operations and Information System, Information International Banking Group, Mumbai, and head of SBI's Cash Management Regional Manager, branch, etc. He will probably speak about the financial inclusion and how democracy has played a role in the financial inclusion in India. To moderate the discussion, we have an eminent journalist, Ms. Nicola Natarajan, works as senior editor, First Post. She is also the visiting fellow at Observer Research Foundation, one of the Asia's topmost think tanks. She is one-stop global editorial resource for the modern day newsroom with capabilities across beats and multiple languages. She is a pioneer in the sense that she led the practice and discipline of live stream newscasts on social platforms long before it became the industry standard in 2016. She graduated with an economics degree from Madras University and is currently studying for a master's in integrated communications. She also did a short stint in England as a British chevening scholar.
You've not corrected the ex-banker part, and I hope to be. You did, okay, thank you. I hope to remain a banker for some more time. Nevertheless, this topic is really, really interesting. Democracy and economy. I mean, when I was discussing with Nicola 2 days back as to how do we shape it up, and she said I have a bigger problem. The group I've been given, one guy from Air India, at that time we didn't know about the BJP connections and the political connection, and one person from technology, and you're a bank. So economy, you fit in, possibly, but how do you link it to democracy? So this was something, and then we decided, okay, let everybody talk about what they're good in. So therefore, whatever areas you are good in or you know about, you should talk about that, and then think, how do you link it to democracy? So for me, I work for State Bank of India. It is a state-owned bank with the government holding almost 58% share. It's a pioneer bank in many ways, 200-year-old institution, and it has been the central bank of India before 1935. Then it became the first bank to be nationalized in 1955 and onward. So anything which the government wanted to do in social area, in economic area, in forex area, going out of India, State Bank was always asked to do it, and this was the pioneer bank always. So in that sense, this bank has been integrally involved in the economic side and the social side, and to that extent it has supported democracy. To me, democracy is very important, but it is led by a combination of many factors. We normally associate democracy with political freedom or the will of people to choose the right candidates who will serve them. But ultimately, the political side is important, but not enough. Therefore, we also require the economic freedom or the economic growth, and also the educational growth, and many other things for democracy to work. We have seen in many countries with democracy, including India, that people sometimes, and especially those with maybe lesser economic and lesser educational backgrounds, could be swayed by extraneous consideration. We heard stories about elections being swayed by distribution of gifts, distribution of money, all kinds of stories. Now, why does this happen? And yet there are people who are well off educationally, maybe very well qualified, but not doing well economically as the cycles have turned, including in countries like the US, and they're very angry. They have this, sometimes they think that democracy is not working for them. So therefore we come to some kind of a conclusion that democracy will work well if, apart from the political choice, people have the economic growth, they do think that they're well off and democracy is working for them. And of course, education and all these are supportive areas. So therefore, to that extent, economic well-being is an important part of democracy. Now, having did this brief introduction, I would argue that in India, which has a lot of people, but a lot of them are not doing well economically, they are poor. The definition may vary. I mean, the definition of 2,000 calories per day, but that's not enough. I mean, even if you get 2,000 calories, are we good economically? I don't think so. So therefore, it is very important for people to have that economic freedom, and that, in a broader sense, is what is financial inclusion. So therefore, financial inclusion is not necessarily only connecting a person to a bank account, how it has been interpreted in some areas. And yet, having a bank account is important. So therefore, how this financial inclusion spread in India, I'll just briefly lay it out. Public sector banks, which were all the banks, including State Bank, which were nationalized from 69, 81, all these years. This group was tasked with financial inclusion. How did it do it? They opened branches. They opened branches in outlier areas, rural areas, semi-urban areas, all, and tried to serve the people by opening accounts, by giving loans to agriculture, loans to small business. Please remember, before 1969, these segments of the Indian economy, that is small business, agriculture, they were not served. The segment which was largely served by banks, which are all private banks, maybe owned by states, the Maharajas and various other entities, interest groups, were all serving the trading class and also the bigger industry. Bigger industry, of course, was not very well developed at that point of time, but yet that was the class it was largely served. No small business, no agriculture, no individual loans or personal loans as we understand today, the retail loans, just non-existent. And this was non-existent, I would argue, till about 94, 95. Till in a big way the private banks started giving it out and everybody joined in the party. So therefore financial inclusion started from opening of branches. A lot of branches got opened. I mean, the density improved, but India has a lot of people. So branches clearly were not enough. And this continued for a long time, and then if you look at the census of 2011, the number of households having accounts was at that point also, after 55 years of India becoming independent, was still about 60%, slightly short of 60%. So 42% of the household, which was 102 million households. Each household, if you put even 4 people, it's a large number of people, 500 million people plus, who didn't have access to bank, no bank account. Now, if you don't have an access to bank account, the bare minimum thing is the money, where do you keep your cash? Keep it at home, under the pillow, under something. Men typically drink it off in rural areas. So therefore, there is no saving. If there is no saving, then there is no investment. There is no investment, you don't get loan, you don't grow. And a first sign of emergency, which could be a health issue, could be a marriage, they'll just push you back into money lenders' arms. You don't have access to money, and therefore you'll never get out of that cycle. So therefore, something had to be done to give access to bank accounts, and it was not happening incrementally, organically, as everybody expected. So therefore, in 2014, when the current government came in, and this was something which was going on, it's not that suddenly started, this scheme was on, but it gave a big push, something called the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, which was launched in 2014. And every bank, the public sector banks, largely were given a target of connecting each household. The target was 75 million households to one bank account. So it was thought that if you give one account at least in a family, it will lead to a lot of good things. And the time was August to January. So it started in August, was to have ended on 26th of January. 75 million accounts in 5 months, flat. And the banks exceeded that number. So therefore in India, when they do it in a targeted manner, as a campaign, as a mission, it gets done. And it gets done and more. So therefore, the good thing about this particular scheme is that it wasn't only just account. It was a complete bouquet of services. So this bouquet included a small pension scheme, this bouquet included a small health insurance, a small life insurance, a small investment scheme, and most of these were run by the banks, so not directly run by the government. Government was providing some kind of a subsidy or a support, etc. from the back end. So this was another good thing. If you involve the government in the delivery of the last mile, typically this becomes very difficult. And for the banks themselves, they found it also very difficult, including the public sector bank. How do you reach out to people in the rural areas, in the outlier areas? You can't start opening branches left, right, and center. It's very costly, not economical, and it doesn't get done in 5 months. So what they did was, this was again something which the Reserve Bank and the banks have been trying for some time, but it got a great push in this time. And I've worked in that rural semi-urban areas with those tools. So I know that this wasn't getting pushed. So there's something called business correspondent, business facilitators. So business correspondents were basically large companies like ITC, Hindustan Lever, which were already supplying goods, consumer goods to a large number of people in the rural areas. They had their network. So the banks tied up with these companies, and their agents went out into the field with handheld computers which were linked to the banks. By this time, core banking had come, by the way. So they could link, and the spectrum and the mobile revolution was already on at this point. So therefore, these handhelds were connecting to the bank servers. These guys would go to the field, open an account on the doorstep, make small value payments, take more cash, and in that sense, at the end of the day, they would go to the bank branch wherever it was, maybe 10 miles away or 15 miles away, and get the whole thing done. So this was, and all of these things were happening in parallel. So another problem which was very much there was identity, KYC. Yeah, we had norms, strict norms about KYC, address proof, and identity proof. And we had voter IDs, we had multiple ID proofs. And many times it was fabricated, there was no surety of a central database. So at this same time, while this was starting out, the Aadhaar came in. The government also gave a big push to Aadhaar, which again was the previous government's initiative, but it got a big push and it got completed in this government's time. So it was important to understand that all of this was required. The KYC norms were loosened, I wouldn't say loosened, but maybe liberalized a little bit. So it wasn't, Aadhaar itself was taken as the only proof of identity and the only proof of residence. So therefore, with doing all of this, the accounts were zero balance accounts were allowed to be opened. Otherwise, there was a minimum balance of maybe 100 rupees also. Nobody could afford that kind of money. So zero balance accounts, Aadhaar as identity, one-stop identity, which could be done at an off-site. You didn't need to have anything, just your thumb impression, and that would be, the banks could validate that you are so and so. And of course, handhelds, business correspondent, a mix of all of this enabled this target of 75 million to be opened. Since then, the government has given a new target, which is to open an account for each adult. And today, after this, as of January 19, almost 338 million accounts were opened. 105 of these were opened by SBI alone. And the good thing is, these are all zero balance accounts when they got opened initially. And today, they have $12.5 billion of money in their accounts. Remember, each of these accounts are very small. The government has helped a lot by routing the subsidies, the wage payments, and all this stuff through these accounts. But this is also their own money. It's not that just the government handouts or something is there. Their own money, they're depositing, they're taking out. The insurance schemes have taken off. Almost 10 million people have enrolled in one insurance, the health insurance. Another 50 million have enrolled in another scheme, which is the life insurance. So we have, and again, 10 million or 50 million may seem big here, but in terms of India, it's still 10% of the total 500 odd million, which is the target group. So therefore, long way to go. But it's this stack of services, all this together, which is making a big difference. It's slow, incremental, not seen outside, doesn't seem revolutionary, but this is what it will take to bring these people up, to give them all these services. SBI runs financial literacy classes. Because unless people know that there is an investment to be done, and insurance is important, the crop insurance has to be taken, maybe they would not find the value. And now that in recent health insurance, all of this is rolled out. So to me, financial inclusion on the back of bank account, the center, registered identity, Aadhaar, and all these services, all these insurance, investment, all of this taken together is the real way in which economic freedom would ultimately is coming and will lead to a better democracy. Thank you.
The perspective that I offer here is one that has worked with the federal government for my entire adult life, and specifically have had multiple contracts in India. So whereas my panel is highly educated and has multiple from India to US, it's also very helpful to get the US's perspective back, because you have the oldest democracy in the world and you have the oldest democracy in the world, where they're working together is what will make the world safer and better across all spectrums. And what I think is very interesting, going back to what you had said about the BJP elections, or actually the India elections that are coming up, is that what happens over in India is going to really determine geopolitics to a very high degree. Right now, what has happened between Prime Minister Modi and the President Trump administration is a strengthening of the US-India relations that has not been historically precedent. And so if for some reason Modi were to not be Prime Minister, that will have an impact, because historically the US has had better relations with other South Asian nations, and that's unfortunate. especially because the US minority in this country is very proud, not only of India, but also of the US, and represents the most educated, the wealthiest minority, as well as those that are the most entrepreneurial. So expanding and developing deeper ties between the two countries is essential, and that only happens due to activities like this. So I thank Rutgers University, I thank the Consul General of India from New York in making this panel occur. I would also like to add that, you know, I'm an engineer, and so what I focused on more is aviation, work with the US Army, and satellite navigation. And so the work that we've done in India was helping create their standards for explosive detection systems. We've helped with their manufacturing processes as we've been transplanting things from the US to India, because right now India has a closest ally status that traditionally has only been there for like the UK and the US. And so there's a lot of potential of transferring of technology from the US to India to compensate for, I would say, disparity, but it needs to be further embraced by India. I think that there's been a bit of a focus on holding the U.S. defense, the India defense deals with Russia, and those might have to be looked at again if you want further investment from the U.S. into India and further embrace. So we'll go into more aspects of that and discussions, but just a brief overview. I think that the elections that are coming up are crucial, they're critical, and as we've seen here in this country, democracy is loud, but it's essential, and in the end, it errs in the side of progress.
And I come from the largest democracy, and the two important aspects of any democratic process is that the role of a state is to provide the social and economic justice to every stakeholder. And in that context, really, since I come from a political party and since we are in the government, I will just briefly talk about what we have done in the last 4.5 years or close to 5 years since we are in power. Because historically, our party, Bharatiya Janata Party, was known, or people used to perceive Bharatiya Janata Party as the party of urban India or party of city dwellers. But that perception has been changed in the last 4.5 years purely because the Honorable Prime Minister, since the day he assumed the power, the first speech he said that we want to work for every stakeholder of the country, irrespective of whether they have voted for us, not voted for us, it doesn't matter, but we will have a very inclusive approach in providing the economic and social justice to every citizen of this country. That was his first statement after having won the election, before even taking oath of the Prime Minister. And he followed what he said, and with a very important slogan which we had. It was not an electoral slogan for us, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. It's a slogan which actually says that for everyone, the development for everyone, and something which we have implemented in the last 4.5 years. And I will briefly touch upon a few things which Mr. Tiwari has already touched, but I will also touch upon a few important landmark initiatives which had been undertaken by the Honorable Prime Minister, purely to touch the life of every citizen of this country. So, since as I said, this was not an electoral slogan for us, it was a well-thought strategy of the Prime Minister, well-thought strategy of our party, that after having assumed the power, we have to work for every citizen. Last mile in the queue, his interest has to be safeguarded by the state. And that cannot happen because historically we all know that there was a policy paralysis. In India in 2013, the economy was in bad shape, no decision was taken. The people of India was really traumatized with the kind of development taking place, particularly in terms of corruption. And that was really rampant in India. The people of India were really fed up with this kind of news every day coming up that the scam after scam was getting unearthed in 2013-14. In that backdrop, the opportunity came for the Prime Minister, for our party, and we had decided to work for the nation. And we initiated with that whatever initiative we'll take will ensure that it reaches to the people. And that can happen if we have a good governance model. And that is something which, when we say a good governance, that defines the good governance is defined by the fairness of the approach the state has, and the efficiency of the conduct the state administration has. And these two primary objectives the government was adopting in their approach. And eventually what we have seen that the first task the Prime Minister had to fix the economy was in bad shape, every macroeconomic parameter was looking terrible. If in last 4.5 years, economy is, everyone knows that it is the best destination for investment. The economy is doing exceedingly well. All the macroeconomic parameters looking very, very good. And the inflation is very low. The other parameters, economic parameters, is looking very, very, very good. And the global community has realized that India is the best destination for investment, primarily because that was the focus. But in terms of softer issues, like as I said, the last mile and sabka saath, sabka vikas, how the development will take for everyone. I will give you two examples because there is a paucity of time and 5 minutes, I can't speak for everything, but I come from a minority community in India. And the perception by the people of globally, and even in this part of the world, that the state does not take adequately and safeguard adequately the cause of minorities. But let me tell you, all the 52 schemes which had been introduced by the government, by the BJP government or India government since 2014, and if you see the benefits, for instance, Ujjwala scheme, the free gas connection to women, and the population of Muslim or the minority in India is like 14 to 15%. But the beneficiary of that is out of this scheme, if you just see, is more than 25% are Muslim beneficiary. How it happened? It's not by design. Clearly, the process was such where we have less interference from the government. It's more of the process which had to be followed by everyone. As I said, that in a manner where no priority should be given to any particular person, but those who deserve and who should be the beneficiary are the ones who have been given that facility. So that is one scheme. There is another scheme. Mudra scheme, for instance. There are Mudra scheme, even in Mudra scheme, which has been a loan given by the bank, that again, the large beneficiary comes from the minority and Dalit community. Likewise, there are many other schemes. If you just analyze the government scheme, you will realize that the beneficiaries are the common man, the poorer section of society, the marginalized section of the society, and that the government has been able to deliver, despite the fact that there's a lot of corruption it used to happen in the past, but today, using the technology in the very best efficient manner, we have been able to reach out to every citizen of this country, and the beneficiaries have been given whatever benefit was to be given to them has reached to their account using the Jan Dhan account and which Mr. Tiwari has talked about, that we opened their account and all the benefits have been passed through direct benefits, and the process, whatever leakages used to happen in the past because of corruption, has also been stopped. So I'll stop here because I go industry and ask, I can speak about the government's achievement, but I will let the panel, the chair speak the question, and then we can respond to it.
I'm based at Department of Economics. My question is the account penetration. Actually, the World Bank report, Global Phoenix database shows that India has an impressive result to compare the 2017 and 2011 and the 14, especially among the female, and they have a high level 76% access to their account. But in another side, the Heritage Foundation ranking shows that India in the economic freedom was ranked 143 out of the 186. It's not good ranking for the India. I think one of the main challenges for the democracy and economy. And another, I want to raise a question about the poverty, because India stayed in the lower income countries, middle income countries. And one of the main problems is the poverty. How the poverty and the economic freedoms has an adverse effect of the democracy in general.
There's less poverty. And plain and simple, I think a very good model would be the second largest employer in India, which is IBM. And IBM, I think, has close to 130,000 jobs in India right now, second only to Reliance. And what they're doing is that, India is producing many engineers and technologists and technicians. And so they've created a symbiotic relationship where I think globally IBM is at around 380,000 and the majority is in India. But see, you still have over 100,000 here. And that symbiotic relationship where you can do a lot of the testing where you might need more high number of thinkers as opposed to just qualitatively having a few number of researchers in the US, I think that model can work. That model can work from a technology standpoint, that model can work from a manufacturing standpoint. If we take pharmaceuticals, for example, right now we purchase them from Canada, from Ireland, from Sweden, but if you think about the fact that the cost to create a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility in India would be far lower. As long as you can get the right quality standards, you're going to be producing massive amounts of jobs. But no matter how much we produce, the population is growing in India to such a degree that demand will be there. And so I think that we need to look at how we can symbiotically connect the two economies so that, from those that are here on the free market side from a business standpoint, they're able to get better margins on their profit. It makes sense for them to produce in India. On the flip side, India is able to make more jobs and they're able to bring that money home where they can utilize the banking system, which otherwise if they're using more agricultural type jobs, they might not be, aligned with it, whereas the US job would maybe require it. And on the other side, the consumer here in the US is able to pay less. For example, if you're paying less for medicine or you're paying less for, the cost that Lockheed Martin is trying to reduce on its aviation development with manufacturing in India. So I think that it's really about bringing the two countries together to solve all these problems, because I think the reason why India is 143 out of 180 some, as per the Heritage Foundation, and economic freedom is more because you have so many people that it takes time to really bridge the gap. But it's very solvable, especially if the US and India are able to come closer.
So we have to, there's a bigger responsibility of any government, and that we have to create as many jobs, and we have to create environment that the environment creates a number of jobs to accommodate all these aspirants who are passing out from the school and colleges. But let me tell you a few important issues, like as Harshvardhan was also talking about, that India has a lot of opportunity, but in terms of skill set, we have identified as a government, we have identified the skill set, our skilled employees, our skilled people are very, very less compared to the Western world. For instance, if you see in Germany, the 96% people are skilled people. Compared to India, in 2014, it was only 1% where people were skilled people. So the government's big focus is skill development, and there's a separate ministry which is actually primarily focusing on providing the skill to the younger generation, and it has the needle has moved from there, and the percentage has definitely improved from 1% now. It is more than 5% people are skilled people. But of course, it's a big task, and it's a gigantic task for the government, and we are moving towards that. But everyone in India thinks that government can create or offer that many jobs. Government job is not cannot offer that many jobs to the aspirant. But what government can do, or what the government is intending to do, is to create an environment where a lot of investment does take place in India and opportunities can be created to accommodate the aspiring young generation. And that is something which is evident from the fact that all the structural reform which had been undertaken by the government in the last 4.5 years, despite a lot of resistance from the opposition parties, but yet government went ahead, because if you are able to take those structural reforms, then the economy will be able to move, grow faster, and as the GDP growth is there, the lot the economy is in order, the lot more investment will take place. And I'll give you one example. Since 2001, between 2001 and 2014, the total FDI in India was $500 billion. And last 3 years, the total FDI, purely because of the structural reform which had been undertaken and the confidence which the global community now has with the Indian government and the policies which have been initiated by the government of India, $500 billion commitment has been committed by the global investors. A lot of companies are setting up their shops in India, manufacturing hub in India, and from there they are producing and exporting to the different parts of the world. That process has begun. All the policies takes time to bed in. It is happening, and I'm sure that going forward, the investment will come. The manufacturing hub, which the global community wants to set up in India, the environment is good and it's happening, and I'm sure that a lot of people will be absorbed in manufacturing space. But away from that manufacturing space, in the service sector also we are doing a lot of things to ensure that enough number of job opportunities the government can create and provide the skilled labor to the companies so that they can be absorbed.
And they're not wrong. The numbers don't lie. The voting numbers are low here. And if you look at the new laws that have existed, anybody can vote by mail. It's very easy. It takes 3-4 minutes. So that's one of the things that I'm going to continue to hopefully promote. And again, I appreciate everyone coming out here and looking forward to chatting with you. Thank you.
Public participation is not about involvement of people. I mean, that's the oldest, age of democracy, for the people, of the people, by the people. But ultimately, democracy works when people actually go out there and claim, their rights. And those rights are as much as given, as much to be exercised. And in India, I think that's one experiment with the Indian democracy that has worked, is that whether it's your public mobilization in terms of across, ethnic mobilizations, linguistic mobilizations, regional mobilizations, the Indian democracy has given that space for large different communities to be able to mobilize for various political, economic demands that they have, and actually get the state to respond to those demands. So that's like moving in a direction of institutionalizing the democratic practices of power sharing, which is what gives resilience to the Indian democracy there. And I think that's something that's worth looking at. And the other thing I think world over that we should look at is that India is one country through its democratic experiments has talked a lot about as to how to deal with difference. And I think that's becoming a problem not just in the so-called global south, but also in other parts of the world. That difference does not necessarily mean divergence. Difference can be negotiated, difference can be, as to how do you tackle with diversity. And India is as diverse as you can go, whether it's in terms of languages or ethnicities or religion, or you can pick up any parameter. It's difficult to find a country which is matching India in its diversity. And how democracy works in that diverse society, matching of the political structures with the diverse moorings of the society, that's another very interesting experiment relating to Indian democracy that we should seriously look at. And one more thing that I just wanted to briefly mention was that in terms of its governing structures, whether it is to do with the judiciary, whether it is to do with your local governments, whether it's to do with the participatory governance, democratic governance, which goes down all the 3 levels. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the next panel. But democracy is in many ways taking the government and the public participation right down to the grassroots level. And that's what is fascinating about this experiment, as to how it is playing out and what it has to do for the rest of the world. And Mr. Kamble, and in the first session also we heard a lot about the different kind of schemes, and I'm happy if the audience were to pick up any questions regarding that. But along with that, just want to end on the note that Mr. Gopal said about diaspora. Indian diasporas in US is probably one of the largest outside India. And Indian diaspora's involvement with Indian democratic experiments, whether it's in the field of education, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's business, whether it's the economy, it's kind of huge in its size, in its different sectoral dimensions, and in terms of involvement of people, right down to the public participation. So there's a huge number of issues are there going on, but I just want to bring it to the audience now as to if you have any issues that you would like the panel to engage more with, or you have any queries or comments, you're most welcome.
As you would have seen in the last discussion, the issues, aspirations and concerns of the two countries are different, but there's a lot of commonality, there's a lot of focus on increasing participation in our democracies. The next panel will discuss democracy and governance and democracy in India. We have with us a very eminent speaker from India, Mr. Dhananjay Singh. Mr. Dhananjay Singh is Director General and National Board Member, National Human Resource Development Network. He was Executive Director NHRDN from 2011 to 17. It is the largest network of HR professionals in India. Prior to joining NHRDN, he worked with All India Management Association, the national apex body of management profession in India, on various management development initiatives of IMA. Mr. Singh worked closely with organizations like Tata Group, NTPC, IBM. Across the board, he has served various private and public sector corporations. He has also worked with management professionals such as Dr. Jagdish Sheth, Dr. John Fleming, Dr. Linda Gratton. I think we have a management guru amongst us. Mr. Dhananjay Singh, could you please come up?
Think about governance and what that kind of means. We've had elements of it all throughout the program today. Different programs the government has announced, things that voters want to see, but voters, it really does come down to the crux of it. What do voters want to see? How do you see them portray that when it comes to election time? You look back and you think back, is it solid social programs like we're discussed today? Is it about job creation? Is it about handouts to people? Blatant handouts. Is it things like even looking at foreign affairs? Having the Consul General up here. What does that matter to voters in India when they think of governance for their nation and what that means for election time? Sometimes India is referred to as a functioning anarchy, but none of us can believe that is truly the case. But finding the heart of voters has been a very difficult exercise. Thinking back in my experience, 20 years now working on U.S.-India relations, a few kind of notables, when you think about the connectivity between what governments have tried to deliver and what voters have, how they've rewarded that or not. You look back at 2004, which to me remains one of India's seminal elections, when you had a sitting government, the Vajpayee government, that was running, based pretty much on the promotion of urbanization. These great rising capitals, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai taking off, even Gurgaon the roots of. And the Indian Shining campaign ended up not being an electoral winner. There's lots of factors, but that's one that often gets pointed out. So urbanization has not been seen so far necessarily as a winner. Think back to, is development the thing? Well, you look back at the states that generally are seen as the most developed in India. Kerala, Goa, Tamil Nadu. I mean, those three states, how many times have they reelected governments in the last 50 years? Twice total. Kerala has never reelected a government since it became a state. So development isn't necessarily the thing. Is it doing business factors? Is it having a functioning economy? Well, we saw state governments and the BJP losing in 3 states, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh, and all 3 were in the top 10 in India in government's own ease of doing business ranking. So it's been really tricky, I think, to figure out what exactly is the system, and even on handouts. Again, looking back at Tamil Nadu, the state that I studied to first learn a bit about Indian politics, Tamil Nadu parties have thrown out everything that can't be nailed down to voters. Bicycles, gold chains, TVs, healthcare, everything, and still, difficult to get reelected. So I don't have any of the answers here. I'm merely to say that we pretty much have figured out so far that those are the things that state governments and federal government have tried and haven't necessarily worked. And that's why it's great to have 2 incredible experts up here to shed a bit of light when you think about governance, what is it that voters want to see? What do they want to see delivered that helps to make India's democracy function and work well? So, I think that, looking back, we've heard some great speakers so far that have touched on elements of this, but I think, Dhananjay, the terrific experiences that you had so far, I'd love to hear, 8 or 10 minutes if you can, of kind of opening remarks on how you think this fits in based on your, incredible experiences dealing with the private sector, dealing with management, dealing with governance, and you've seen it. So over to you, sir.
Governance is an experience. And this experience is at 3 levels. Experience of individuals, experience of different groups which are there in the society, and experience of the nation as a whole. In Indian democracy, we call it Jan, which is individuals, Gan, which is groups which are there in any society, and Man, which is the collective of experience of governance. If it is an experience at all these 3 levels which run simultaneously, then it is an experience of what? It is an experience of intent, of people who are running governance, who are responsible for governance, and the execution. How the services are delivered to people, that experience is governance. The uniqueness of governance is it is cause as well as the effect. It is cause. Accountability, whether it is bureaucratic accountability or the political accountability, is a cause. And it is also effect. Participation of people, stakeholders in any democracy is very, very important. Cause and effect again. Rule of the law. We talked about RTI. In fact, ma'am talked about RTI. We talk about responsiveness. Maybe people are accountable, but they are not responsive. In governance, people talk about equality. They talk about inclusiveness. They talk about effective governance. They talk about governance which is not only effective, but it is also efficient. It delivers on time. And how robust are our grievance handling abilities? Because any democracy will have grievances. And what's our ability to handle such grievances? And this is all universal. It is not unique to India. It's all universal. Now, when we focus on this topic, the Indian governance, very briefly in 2-3 minutes, I'll talk about 1910. And that was the year when people talked about the self-local governance which was available in India for centuries, for thousands and thousands of years. India may be a new democratic country, but as a nation, as a civilization, it's very, very old. And in 1911, we have a book called Arthashastra. Those who are from India, they know that book. It was found in one of the libraries in the Cape of Mysore. And that was a time when universal franchise was not available in India. Even if we talk about the last in terms of Britishers, the Government of India Act 1935, the franchise was available based on religion, based on gender, but it was not available on a universal basis to India.
All kinds of political thought prevail in India. I think India is the only country where a communist government comes to power and then loses the election and leaves, because communists, once they gain power, they never leave. I think India is the only example in the world where communists are voted into power and they are voted out of power. I don't think that has happened anywhere in the world. And so that's India for us. And all strains of public opinion are there. The previous panelist was talking about Nakshals. Nakshals are, for those who are not familiar with the word Nakshals, they are Maoists. They subscribe to ideology of Chairman Mao, which may not find many followers in China today, but they have followers in India. So we have even that stream of political thought in India. So that it just shows how complex the Indian political scenario is. And we have, of course, the federal structure. We have a federal government, we have a state government, and we have local self-government. And somehow operating at all these layers is the bureaucracy, of which I am a part, and the bureaucracy is known as the steel frame of India. Now people may have opinions about the Indian bureaucracy, whether we need the bureaucracy or not. I think there are two big countries in the world which are comparable in size and in economy and various dimensions are the United States, which doesn't have a bureaucracy, and China, which has a bureaucracy, but Chinese bureaucracy is the political bureaucracy. Whereas I think India is a unique situation where the bureaucracy is not a political bureaucracy, it serves the political party in power. Now that creates its own challenges, but I think it is also largely responsible for the success of the Indian democratic example, because we did not have the spoil system that we have in the United States, where bureaucrats change with the government. No matter who wins the next elections, I will remain the Consul General unless I goof up badly and record. So that's very comforting, and that encourages me to talk openly in this forum. I would just like to mention that what Rick was mentioning. What is that common man looks at the government when he or she interacts with it? I believe that the common person looks for response. Responsiveness is the first attribute, or the primary attribute of any government. What people don't like is indifference or lack of response, because all governments, I believe, the political process, I believe, survives on problem solving. A politician wants to solve problems for people, but what the common people wants is response. So if you go to a district in India, you will find hundreds of people in the house of a politician, but and he may not have all the tools in his hands to respond, to solve with the problem of the common man. But you will find people in his house. But you go to the house of a district collector who has the tools to solve the problems. You will not find too many people there. Because I think people find response at the door of a politician. And I think unless we change the bureaucratic system, unless the bureaucratic system becomes responsive, I think governance will be challenged in India. What I have seen over the last few years is that the political system has forced the bureaucratic system to become responsive. So today, our road transport corporation or the police, in fact, I was quite surprised to find tweets from the Kumbh Mela organizers. The Kumbh Mela police is tweeting. And somebody's lost, they immediately tweeting and finding the spouse of the lost husband or wife. So I was and some of them were tagging the consulate in New York. I don't know why. So I got lots of tweets on Kumbh Mela. So I think Twitter is a powerful medium. It shows the responsiveness of the government. People who travel on Indian railways, if the train is late, they tweet the railway minister. And he makes sure that the train speeds up. So it is incredible degree of responsiveness that has been ushered in India in the last several years, thanks to technology, thanks to reorientation of the Indian diplomatic service. I think all of us are on our toes all the time, trying to respond to the grievance of the people. I believe that a country like India, which has challenges, which has scarcity of resources, where there are too many demands on the system, we may not be able to solve problems of the people. But I believe that if we respond, even if you say no, I can't do it, I think people get a lot of satisfaction. And I think the more and more we use technology, and all these previous panels have talked about inclusiveness, talked about Jan Dhan Yojana, talked of Aadhaar, talked of Mudra scheme, Stand Up India, Start Up India. I think these are all schemes, but at the end of the day, these are mechanisms where the state, the government is responding to the needs of the people. Earlier, the state was elitist, it would only respond to the needs of certain category of people, people who had access to higher education, people who have belonged to what we know as the upper caste, or people who had heritage and legacy in India. I think what has happened with technology in the recent years and all these inclusive schemes is that hierarchy has been broken, and all kinds of people are putting demand on the system, whether they are the Dalits or the minorities or women, and the system is responding. And that's why we have these incredible figures where Milinji mentioned that 70% of the beneficiaries of a particular scheme are women, or they are Dalit, or that Mr. Pasha, Syed Zafrul Islam mentioned that more than 25% of the beneficiaries of the Ujala scheme are minorities. I think these are indicators that the system is breaking the hierarchy, it is taking governance to the people, and the government is responding. And I see the best example in our Ministry of External Affairs or in the consulate, where we are trying to respond to, I use the word attack, on the consulate from all quarters, whether it is on Twitter, on Facebook. People are even Snapchatting us. Can you believe it? And I don't know how to use Snapchat. So I have a Snapchat account. I was forced to open a Snapchat account because I was told that certain section of the people, like youngsters, they only talk to you on Snapchat. And my daughters were amazed that, why do you? I said, just to connect to people, of that age group. We are not able to connect to that age group. So what we are trying to do is respond continuously. And I think there the difference will come in governance, where people will realize that, the government structures that have been created in the last 70 years, they are responding to the needs of the people.
So here you are, you've been an outpost in Latin America, you're here in New York City, you've got the investment community, the diaspora, obviously the tweeting that we see with the Honorable Minister, a lot of that is, visa issues and somebody trapped and a relative deceased and things, but you're at the outpost now. You're representing the government of India, you're trying to help deliver governance. When you think of the person in rural Bihar, in Uttar Pradesh, how do you connect your role here in terms of helping governance, back in the home country? Things that they want to see the government provide. What is the role of the Foreign Service in having this diplomatic corps out there? What are some of the, main things that you think about when you wake up in the morning of how can I help Mother India function more effectively from the South Coast of New York? Can you give us a sense about what that kind of looks like in your day job and how it connects back to, voters back home and things they care about that you work on?
I think, it's a very, very relevant question, because I think that makes all of us, particularly diplomats, question the relevance of our external service or diplomatic service to, what is the objective of the Indian diplomatic service? It is to prepare an external environment conducive for the transformation of India. So, the transformation of India will not happen only by the efforts of people within India. The transformation of India will happen with the efforts of people within India, people outside India, and friends of India who live outside India. And I think our role comes in the last two categories that I mentioned. People of India who live outside India, the Indian diaspora, and friends of India, people like Rick. How do we connect these two categories of people or communities or countries to India? That is our role. And how do we do it? We do it by issuing a visa. Every tourist that goes to India, he spends money in India. So if I can issue a visa quickly, in a day, in half a day, I'll make sure that the tourist travels to India. He goes to India, he creates jobs for a person in both Gaya. He visits Kumbh Mela, he creates jobs in India. I facilitate an investor to go to India. He looks at all the options. And if I'm able to convince him that, don't go to China, come to India, I help my country. So I think there are many ways where we play a role. If I'm responsive to him, if I give a positive image of my country, if I'm helpful, if I'm friendly, I think we influence people, opinions at a particular level, at an individual level, at a public opinion level, in the media, and general positive impression about India. I think those help in decisions which help my countrymen back home in Bihar or in Madhya Pradesh or in Andaman and Nicobar. I think that is the role of our service, interpreting India to the foreigner or the Indian diaspora. More and more they involve themselves in India. I think, my job of transforming India gets fulfilled.
Great response, sir. Dhananjay, looking at the different levels of governance in India, and after I ask this one, I'll throw it open for a few minutes for the audience, but one question that I've got for you, maybe you can shed some light. So, a lot of times, especially from a distance, we focus on Delhi. What did the Prime Minister eat for breakfast? What the Parliament do? That kind of stuff. But state governments are enormously powerful, and in some ways more powerful than American state governments. City governments, less powerful in a lot of ways, although some cities have pretty powerful municipal corporations. But when you think about citizens, voters' expectation for governance, how would you characterize in terms of perceptions of the central government and what they expect for delivery versus state governments? Is there a difference? I mean, obviously they have different functions. National security and defense for the national government, water and electricity for the states, but do they have different expectations for the state government when they think about who it is that impacts their lives on a regular basis? How much weightage do they attribute to the central government versus state government? I think for this audience, getting a bit of insight in center versus states will be very important.
Voting patterns and voters, when they vote for municipality elections, panchayat elections, MLAs and MPs, you will find it's a very intelligent choice which they make. They don't go by what media is saying. They're very clear what they want when they are electing a person for a panchayat in a village. And those agendas are very, very specific and clear. They're very clear about it. The voters are very clear that, okay, this person will deliver, this councillor will deliver to me A, B, C. MLA will deliver to me on these accounts, and union government will deliver to me XYZ. That kind of clarity is very much there in the country. And I'll give you an example. Indian democracy has gone through some very dark clouds. And I'll talk about an incident of 1975, 12th June, when then Prime Minister and one member of parliament who lost actually election, he challenged that, okay, you have done something wrong. And in Indian democracy, as Sir was talking about, judiciary is very independent. And the judiciary gave an order that then Prime Minister, she cannot fight election for 6 years. Night of 25th June 1975, 26th June, emergency was declared in the country. That only economic indicators or indicators where you can push the agenda which you have in mind, because you have the authority, will not live long as far as Indian democracy is concerned. It is challenged. And even that year, Supreme Court clearly said that government is responsible to the people. They cannot say that just because it is important and it is secret, so I will not reveal. And that became the base to right to information. So as far as the clarity voters are concerned, and in the larger canvas of Indian democracy, we don't look at people just as voters. We are responsible for their physical, emotional and spiritual well-being and growth. Because when I'm talking about Indian democracy and Jan, Gan and Mana, it becomes very important. Voter may not be aware, for him or for her,
It is important that whatever is here and now should be delivered in next quarter, in next 1 year. Those subjects, as far as the political parties are concerned, we may have ideological differences, but all of them are serving the same other.
So these are the last two questions from the audience for the entire event today. So let us know your name and organization, and please make it a brief question, and we'll start up at the front here.
Now we are in the oldest democratic country, and the largest democratic country is coming for this discussion with the two types of these democracies. In the oldest democratic country, we have only two parties, political parties, Republican or Democratic. But in the largest democratic country in India, we have hundreds of political parties. So how this democracy, is it a challenge for the democracy to govern when hundreds of political parties are involved in this type of democracy? Is it a challenge for the democracy to manage the interest of different political parties in one along with this single government? How the challenges can be faced by the,
Let's take the second question real quick too, just because we're running. I see in the back there. Yep.
Mr. Rosso, you talked at the beginning about how, with, for example, the 2004 election showed a backlash to I guess, urbanization in general in India. And I think to a larger extent, it kind of also showed a backlash to, the neoliberal and kind of Western form of globalization that had kind of manifested itself in India throughout, following the fall of the Soviet Union. And I think that around that time, we also saw a lot of literature on kind of rebranding India. So my question to Mr. Singh is, how has the, I guess, needs of how has the this kind of backlash to the neoliberal globalization manifested itself in India's kind of democratic structures? And my question to Mr. Chakravarti is, how has, like on an international level, how has India managed to kind of rebrand itself and take advantage of globalization on India's terms? Thank you.
So, multi-parties, boon or bust, and globalization, good or bad?
Blossoming of multiple parties has a role in our society because they are very good outlet points or vents when people feel that they are not being part of the political process or the political process is not answering their needs. They form a political party. Some survive, some perish. But I think it's a natural process. It allows thousand flowers to bloom. Some may become trees, others may not. But I think it's part of the festival of Indian democracy. I don't think we can curb it. It has to be a natural progression. And there may be centralization, I don't know. But I think it allows regional forces to play a role. It allows sub-regional forces to play a role. And I think that is important for the unity of the country. If we try to curb those forces, I think we can pay a big price. And I think the regional and sub-regional forces, they are response to a particular situation that they face, but they are not against the country. They are also equally patriotic and nationalistic. And I think it has helped India to remain united. That's my personal view about regional parties and sub-regional political formations.
In psychology, the problem has some deeper layers also. So the problems, when we say problems in the current context, there is some deeper context to it. India is not a country of one language. India is not a country of one culture. Unity in diversity is our only identity. Why it happened? Because we have, as rightly Sir said, we have given
people the freedom to express themselves, which has expressed itself in different languages, different cultures, different traditions. So I have nothing more to add, just to say that whenever we say problem, it has some go down 2-3 more levels, and you will see that there is a beautiful opportunity available to us, particularly in a democratic framework. Rest all he has already responded, I just echo what he just said. Coming back to you, sir, there is nothing as backlash in a democracy. Whatever mandate is given by the people of the country, does not matter which part of the hall we are sitting, we have to respect that mandate. We have to reflect that what we have done, what we could do better, and that's how any democracy works. Indian people are 10 steps ahead of any political party in the country. Their ambitions are not local. Their ambitions with advent of technology, their ambitions are global. They will contribute whether they are in US or anywhere in the world or in India, they will contribute based on their upbringing of a multiple society where they'll see all kind of people around. They will contribute. So there is nothing as backlash. It is mandate of the people and we will accept it wherever we are sitting, this side or that side.
While in India, as you know, even Supreme Court has said that representation comes later. First comes your voice and your authority and your right to your voice. So maybe people who have 20%, 30% of the vote, they also become member of parliament, which means it is not more than 51% or 50%. That's on the overall larger canvas. The voting patterns and voters, when they vote for municipality elections, panchayat elections, MLAs and MPs, you will find it's a very intelligent choice which they make. They don't go by what media is saying. They're very clear what they want when they are electing a person for a panchayat in a village. And those agendas are very, very specific and clear. They're very clear about it. The voters are very clear that, okay, this person will deliver, this councillor will deliver to me A, B, C. MLA will deliver to me on these accounts and union government will deliver to me XYZ.